Cool. So hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're ready to get started, and we have a lot on our schedule for today, so we can jump right in. First, we're going to hear from our new executive committee members, so the adjunct chairs who are here, and also any new members who didn't get to introduce themselves in the previous meeting that we had. So why don't we start with Anna? She's here. Yes. Would you like to give a quick intro? Susanna?
Oh, yes, sorry, I didn't hear Suzanne. Sorry, then maybe that was missing on my audio connection. Yeah, thank you. My name is Susanne Boll, and I'm the new Vice President Conferences for SIGCHI. I'm a faculty member at the University of Oldenburg, and I'm happy to join the executive committee. And I also have the chance to present my role as the VP Conferences later on. So I'm just happy to say hi to you all.
Thank you. And Pageman.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pejman. I'm an associate professor at Ontario Tech University and VP publications for SIGCHI. And yeah, very nice to see you all today.
Thank you, Pageman. And I think we're missing Matt Jones today, so we'll wait until next time to hear from him. And then we have our brand new adjunct chairs. So let's start with Luigi.
Yes, hi everybody. I am Luigi De Russis, assistant professor at Politecnico di Torino in Italy, and I'm the new AC for community support. And I'm also happy to be here and to be in DC.
And could you say a little bit about what community support is about?
Yes, community support is, I think so. It's mainly about supporting the community in the many ways that SIGCHI is already doing. So like the SIGCHI Development Fund, the Gary Marsden Travel Award. So the idea is to continue the job that the SIGCHI EC did in the last years with these two tools, and in the same time trying to simplify and enhance those instruments to better actually support the community, and in parallel to find new ways. My idea, at least my goal, is to find also a new way to support the community so that the community could benefit from SIGCHI and vice versa.
Thank you, Luigi. Let's hear from Kale, our AC for Equity.
Hi, I'm Kale, the AC for Equity. I'm from the University of Saskatchewan on Treaty 6 land in Canada. Yeah, and it seems like my role will be quite sprawling. So working with, I hope, all of you in each of your respective fields to just make sure that community is being heard, that the needs of SIGCHI members, both marginalized and not, are reflected in the kind of programming, the policy making, and yeah, we'll be deciding on like the major pushes for projects within the next couple of weeks here. But yeah, if there are any questions regarding equity across pretty much any axis of oppression, just let me know. I'm happy to lend what knowledge I have to it.
Thank you, Kale. And next we have Simone, our AC for knowledge sharing.
Yeah, hi. Hi, my name is Simone Fischer. I'm AC for knowledge sharing. Yeah, I'm very happy to be part of the EC team. And yeah, I'm associate professor at Maastricht University, Czech Republic, and scientist at Austrian Institute of Technology and University of Vienna in Austria. And part of my role, I see to find out and to understand how we can support conference chairs, especially with the communication, sharing knowledge between ACI and SIGCHI and the conference chairs. So also I will work close together with Susanne so that we can support you as best as we can. And yeah, and I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, Simone. And Priya.
Hello, everyone. I am Priya Kumar. I'm an assistant professor at Pennsylvania State University in the Northeast US. And I am the newly selected AC for volunteer support. As all of us know, volunteers are the lifeblood of the organization. And so I want to work on and continue all of the efforts that previous ECs and EC members have been doing to sort of make sure that our volunteers feel supported, they feel recognized, they recognize that they are the lifeblood of the organization, yeah, to sort of make sure that the community can thrive. So that's kind of big picture the way I see the role, and I'm very excited to be joining the committee and to be working with all of you.
Thank you, Priya. I think that we're missing Nick Bidwell, who's our AC for Sustainability. I'm not sure if Susan is here.
Susan's here.
Susan, are you
Susan's
okay?
here.
You're on the phone. Okay. Yes. Would you
I'm
like
on
to?
The phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm Susan Dre, and I am the new AC for Partnerships, which is a new role. I'm extremely excited to figure out what it means and to work to build relationships with our related organizations, and also within our own organization between academics and practitioners and et cetera. So I'm the big bridge builder here. I'm currently on a boat. We're doing a little bit of boat ethnography. And so I'm on a sailboat actually currently in Connecticut. And that's why I'm on the phone, and I will probably just be mute the whole time, assuming I can figure out how to remute myself. *6.
Maybe we can figure that out for you. But yes, thank you, everybody. I think if we do see Nick here, we'll also hear from her. If not, then next time. And also we'll be putting out a blog post with just more detailed introductions into these roles so that you have some idea of what they mean, because some of them are newly defined. So we're doing well on time so far. Susanna, let's go ahead and get started on the first agenda item, which is just hearing your vision for our conferences.
Yes, thank you very much. I have a new role, but I also have, let's say, brought an agenda with me I would like to implement in the coming years and to help the conferences of SIGCHI grow in several ways, of course, in cooperation with the other members of the community. Okay, but I have an academic life, so I have a research in human technology interaction. This is probably not a surprise. And I'm working in multimodal interfaces in safe relevant areas. And also I have a strong application, let's say, tendency, or I have applied, I do apply my research in transportation, health, and industry 4.0. But what brought me here is also a strong expertise in organizing events. I think one is that I have done several roles over the last 20 years, which also showed, you know, from proceedings to general chair, you know, the role and the importance of all of these positions. I've been doing work in both SIGMM and SIGCHI, so I also had a good opportunity to see how different communities approach things differently and maybe also benefit from that. And I'm a member of several steering committees, and I am a very strong, I'm a passionate person for diversity and outreach, which I currently fulfill within SIGMM. I think, of course, as a vice president for conferences would have to do a lot of natural work that is relating to all of our conferences. But I think for a 3-year term, it might make sense to again grow and maybe even more professionalize different things for all of our conferences. Now that our community has also grown immensely, I do remember the statistics of the growth of CHI, for example, as a conference from the early years when I was still a PhD student until now. And I just would like to highlight a few things that I would like to do in the coming years. For example, here's a recent screenshot when I was a moderator at Automotive UI. So we have now really successfully run hybrid conferences. And I think, again, I would really like to thank everyone who has supported this. And I think it was immense what happened 1.5 years ago. So from 0 to 100%, we jumped to mobile and now to hybrid events. And one of the practices I would like to mention here is that we have a wonderful document that was, I think, created within a few weeks that shared all the experience of running these events. And for example, my predecessor, Andrew Cohn, has also done a lot of work and support in his role as VP conferences to help conferences go on this new way. And now for me, it's the time also to collect these experiences, you know, what were the best practices? And so why not think of developing with the knowledge that is there, a guide to hybrid and see, you know, what could we do to help conferences in their attempt of going hybrid, of thinking of in-person and virtual events, and not leave the burden to them, but also as a community and as SIGCHI help them maybe support it on a general level for all conferences. Another element is that, and I'm just posting here a little tiny image from an ongoing conference of this mobile HCI, which is currently running. And with every conference, you get this huge amount of people who are volunteering. And it's all a lot of dedication that you see here. But still, we find elements in, let's say, interviews or talking to people that have this sentence, oh, if I had known this earlier, or, oh, I wasn't aware of this. Oh, no, this was different for me. So we might think of streamlining this in the sense of making it better to onboard to such a conference, to think of incoming and outgoing chairs, to think of maybe mentors that are helping a conference team to organize. This is not saying that the volunteers are not doing an excellent job, no way, but I think we are trying to get, let's say, save time on lacking knowledge and just put all their effort in running an excellent conference. And another element that has been bothering me since many years is the question of documentation of a conference. If you have ever done a conference organization, you might get like this, I'm putting it in brackets here, a secret Dropbox folder or something where this is kind of, okay, this is the dump of our knowledge, which is fully fair out of the perspective of the individual conference organizers, but we haven't developed, let's say, a little bit more of a structure for collecting material and handing it over, specifically as you as a new chair don't understand all the data that is in last year's folder because you are only once in a while come across several things. So that is something I would like to introduce. All of this will take a lot of time, so don't expect this is going to happen this December. It's going to be probably a full time of my term. And one of the steps I went with that was that I introduced the Audio UI conference handbook. So it was actually inspired by a conference handbook that exists for Menschen, Computer, Human and Computer, the biggest German HCI conference, which had the tradition of writing this book. And it has become a wonderful source of the community. And here we tried, and it's a living document, and it's existing, to collect it, and every new chair had appreciated so much. So we try to think of these best practices and how to maybe implement it for other conferences. What can we do to help them do that? And how do they see a benefit for the growing of their own conference series? And then a final thing that always came to my mind is that you don't know what to do when in this 1 year. First of all, you get these requests, okay, you should submit a TRMF. okay, what is that? And then you find it out. And so you do a lot of things step by step. But sometimes you come across the information, I could have had an advertisement in the communications of the ACM, but I should have known earlier because now the deadline's gone. So that would be very helpful to think of individual steps that we can collect and maybe also support chairs along a timeline, probably like for most of the smaller conference, like a year in advance, and then see how that can help in this conference. And the final thing that I hear a lot is that both headquarters is excellent and the volunteers are excellent, but sometimes maybe in different time zones or in different understandings, they are not understanding them excellently. So I think there is potential. So I also want to understand better how to collect the volunteers to some, of course, important persons in the headquarters and sort of make the communication fruitful and very beneficial all the times. That's a lot of work to do. I'm happy to cooperate with other chairs in the executive committee. A few here, like finances, sustainability, equity, accessibility, and operations. And also, I'm very happy that Simon Kriegelstein is here for helping for knowledge sharing. And I'm also happy to work with further people in the community to make some of my visions I have for that role being implemented in the next 3 years. And I'm very happy to any, suggestions and comments. Can also say this has been done. Maybe I didn't know, and you could also say this is ridiculous, or you will never manage to do so. I'm really open, and I'm willing to learn and give that community something back that it has been giving me for the last years.
Thank you, Susanna, for that presentation. And we're doing good on time so far. So if there are questions that you'd like to ask, you can raise your hand or you can put stuff in the chat. And you can also think about it. We can come back because we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. Did a hand go up? Yeah, Helena.
Sorry, I've had to learn to lower my hand then before I start talking, or else I forget. No, I think that sounds really awesome. There was a meeting that we had back in like January, the CSCC meeting, and I don't know how good, if we recorded it or anything, or how good the notes are, but we definitely had like a lot of requests for exactly that like organization of knowledge sharing, and not only within but across the conferences, and then also the things that we think they should know. And I remember distinctly one of the things that they said, I don't remember who, but was that it's not good enough to be like, here's how you do this, or this is some policy you should be aware of, or something like that, but rather having it like timeline based, or even, so you want to promote your conference, these are all the things you should know, like much more like when they're in the moment and they're like, now what do I do? Then that's where at least the steering committee chair and the conference, the general chairs were like, that's like the organization that they want. So I don't even know how to wrap my head around that. Your experience prior to this probably is going to help a lot, but I just remember that feedback.
Yeah, and it might also worthwhile to going through these videos who are just more or less like a huge material, and maybe watch them again and extract the qualitative comments and condense them, because at that moment I think it was intended to be just a resource, for all the people out there trying to go more, either virtual or hybrid. But I think we might watch them again from an experience perspective and try to collect, because one element would be for the different sections I have suggested that we, more or less write a Medium article about it, in some sense of summarizing what is going on and then pointing to, I think SIGCHI has done a very good job on using Medium articles as a summary of their ongoing activities, and then enter also the pointers to maybe materials, statistics, and so on, to capture it a bit in written word, because not everybody goes back to all these long videos, even though they are exciting.
Helena, I have a question about those meetings. So we did have some follow-up work that that was going on, right? I think you, maybe Vino and Andrew had discussed the takeaways from those meetings. Am I remembering correctly?
Oh my God, this has been the week of me remembering things that have fallen by the wayside. So yeah, so they're not really doing takeaways. Andrew, did we do any like analysis of that? Like I remember that a huge part of it was when I was pulling together all the policy documents, as well as like looking at the violations database and thinking about how to fit that in. So that's how that whole conversation got started. With regards to what Vino and I were working on, we were working on, and we should probably put this on Basecamp or something in terms of things that we probably should look at again, but trying to capture how all the steering committees are created, all the conference steering committees are created, and how many of them actually have like a structured volunteering mechanism. So Priya might want to also like take this up as well. And how often our steering committee members rolled over and get new people in and stuff like that, because we were just thinking about, you know, that's where it all starts. It starts with the steering committee for the conference. And so that was really ill-defined across all of our 24 conferences. So sorry.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. And also response, I think this is one thing we want to try, also find the bylaws and see if we can see where they stand.
and then one other thing that you brought up that some others here had also brought up earlier was just the transition to hybrid. And a question that Adriana raised, I don't know if Adriana is here. Yes, she is. So would you like to bring that up, Adriana? Maybe considering bringing up or putting together a task force around hybrid and virtual.
Yeah, that was something I'd thought about. I don't know. I think many of us are interested in the hybrid question and how do we design for hybrid? How do we design better experiences? So my question was, does it make sense for us to try to put together a task force or an initiative to discuss these things with some regularity and sort of maybe trial some things out and see how they work out? So.
And also collect data, right, from conferences that are going.
Of course.
Yeah,
yeah, I think one step towards that was for me that we actually run qualitative interviews, really invite people over, run a 1 hour Zoom or whatever meeting, record it, not store it. I'm not so much a fan of storing recorded videos, but transcribe it and see, you know, if we can cluster things. And I'm absolutely, and this would be a perfect starting point, because I also think we should discuss how much of this should be, I'm using the word standardized, you know, conferences might not like that, but maybe there is a help saying, look, this is a core we could agree on as values, what is good for us. And this is the thing you can freely curate, you know, or this is the thing we are offering you as a technology and you don't have to pay it. And we are taking over this and we have a technical personnel who is eager and happy to run it. So we might see where that goes, you know, because we also find that there was a lot of experimentation very positively. People tried out, and we tried out things and we were really bringing in a lot of experiences with that. And we have to find out, are we already at the end or are we only just at the beginning of a now consolidated experimentation phase of really seeing, okay, which format fits well, which community. Yeah, absolutely, fully agreed. And if there's people willing to work on that, or I can also join that from this side, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah, thank you. Stacy, I'm wondering if you want to just mention also your experience on the accessibility chair front, right? So there are some conferences that may or may not have accessibility chairs, and how that can quickly get complicated Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's really challenging because we are kind of like working in this federalist model where we want to make sure that we're giving the volunteers their own kind of agency and defining how their conferences run. But we also want to make sure that people know when they go to a SIGCHI conference, they can count on it being accessible to them. So one thing that I did with my co-chair back last fall, Soraya Preach, is we reached out to all the conferences who didn't have an accessibility chair or a diversity, equity, inclusion chair or something of the like specified. And we tried to share with them the information we have about why it's important to have one. We created an open call template for them so that they could circulate it within their communities and try to identify some leaders from amongst their own communities to take on this role. And it's challenging. It's challenging because it takes skill and it takes a lot of time to do that job well. And so some of them were unable to identify volunteers. And we didn't follow up. Now we have a committee, and that's something we hope to do, is to follow up with them and try to ensure they have one. But what we're dealing with now is conferences who don't have accessibility chairs. They have attendees, presenters even, with disabilities who need accommodations, and they don't have the expertise or the time to actually provide appropriately for them. So I see a number of ways forward here, but it's going to take time. One is maybe we have a pool of accessibility chairs who could step in. We could try to kind of cultivate expertise among some members within individual communities so that they have a pool to start with. We also think that we could possibly centralize some resources. Like right now, the executive committee has contracts with sign language interpreters and captioners who can serve our events, but we don't have a contract that would help serve conferences. And so what we have is individual conferences trying to figure out who's a reliable sign language interpreter, how do I hire them, what are normative rates, et cetera. And so maybe we could centralize some of those resources and help them contract out with these folks. I could go on and on, but does that kind of help?
Yeah, and I think we've also seen the same issues or similar issues crop up with community support mechanisms. So when we're talking about the SIGCHI Development Fund grants and we're talking about the Gary Marsden Travel Awards, just getting the information out. And we've seen that some information that was like 3 years old and pages that are not linked from our webpage, our homepage, still make their way into conference websites. And so that's been a little bit concerning because we don't have those programs anymore. So just, figuring out how to get, I guess, updated information and resources out. Anything else? We have 1 minute for talking about conferences and then we can move on. Okay, so I guess 1 minute may not be enough to go into anything new. So thank you, Suzanne, for that the presentation. We're also, just so that all of you know, we're also going to be putting out, and all of you, as in everyone on the EC and also everyone outside of the EC here, we're putting out an open call that will be a permanent open call. So just for people to express interest in participating. And so if there are specific aspects around conferences, I think that's something we could also state on that call, Suzanne. So if you're thinking about putting together a committee with specific areas that you'd like to be targeting, then that might be a way for people to volunteer. And we can revisit that form a little bit later. So moving on then to the next item. So I'm actually doing this item because Josh Andres, who's our AC for awards, is not able to make it. I think it's 2:30 a.m. for him. So I'm just going to be doing that for him. And here's a link that I'll post here. So everyone who's here in the call, if you could take a look at the survey, we will be sharing it more widely. But for now, if you have feedback on the survey, things that we could be asking, that feedback is totally welcome. And this is really feedback that we're wanting to take from the community around awards. So how we do awards. And I'll just talk us through the different aspects that we're wanting to know more about. So with regards to the awards process, there's multiple aspects, right? So there's the nomination form, so how people apply, and by application, that's generally nomination. So people are nominating other people, and that form has traditionally required a CV, but we took away that requirement because we've heard multiple times that that becomes a barrier for people to nominate others. And we really want to increase the pool of nominations. A second aspect is around the committees, so the people who actually do the review. There are subcommittees, 4 of them, that do the review of all of these nominations to figure out who's going to get the awards. And that's, there's a cycle to those, and some of those will be changing. So there will be also an open call for recruiting people to review these awards, award nominations. And then a third aspect is just kind of outlining that open call process, because we started doing that with our very last call that we did to recruit the chair of the Social Impact Award Committee. But we haven't done that previously for the other committees. So Josh is working on formalizing that. And then we'll be looking at identifying the 2020 to 2021. So this, sorry, we're not 2021 to 2022 timelines. I was behind 1 year to see how we're going to be doing a call for these nominations and when the awards are going to be given out. And also, do we want to do nominations with the same timeline in mind? So inviting, soliciting nominations in December and then giving out those awards in February, and then having everyone present or be there at CHI. Or one thing we also discussed, and we're trying to collect feedback on that, which is, do we want to distribute these award talks and award distribution mechanisms so that we're it's more spread out through the year, and it's also possibly at different conferences, because some of our awardees may be more active in other conferences and may prefer to present in, say, CSCW as opposed to CHI. So those are things that we're rethinking. There's also going to be a few ways in which we intend to collect input from the community. So the first one is this survey, which if we're able to get a few responses, get some testing first, then we'll distribute it to everyone in the community. So we'll send it out using our regular channels. And then we're planning to do a couple of roundtables to cover different time zones, and just to make sure that we're able to create space for people to share their thoughts on awards, because that's something that came up. If you're aware, we did a series of equity talks earlier this year, and in many of the equity talks roundtables, we had awards come up. What else? So with regards, there's one other thing, which is just the kinds of awards that we have been giving. So if you're familiar, ACM actually introduced a set of new awards to recognize different roles within the computing community. And we would also like to invite feedback on what other awards people think we could be instituting. And so that's also feedback that we're collecting through the survey. But if you have thoughts about this at any time, you can email us. One thing that we are planning to leverage is that we've always had a special recognition award. And what we were thinking was, in the coming year, we might use that special recognition award to invite different types of nominations for different contributions in the community, whether they're on research, on education, service, design, and then see what types of awards people are interested in giving, so that we can consider maybe introducing some of those for the next award cycle, which would be next year, because it does take about I don't know, several months at least to get an award approved by the ACM for SIGCHI to introduce it. So that's, and then of course, outreach is certainly something we would be working on to make sure that people know that there are nominations, and also just to get the word out that we're doing different awards, and we'd love input. So I think that's everything for awards. I want to ask Shawen if there's anything that I've missed out, because I know Shawen has been working with Josh as well. So
thank you, Neha. I'm just gonna add two things. One is to kind of motivate why we're revisiting the timeline for the 2021-2022 year. Obviously, we want to do it from the community standpoint, is to kind of get people excited about this recognition, these awards throughout the year. And then because sometimes, for whatever reasons, life happens, and then you kind of miss the deadline to nominate yourself or nominate others. So that's one of the reasons we want to kind of look at the timeline more systematically. And then the other thing is kind of follow up on what Susanna mentioned earlier, is to really look at the term limit of a lot of these people, either on the conference steering committee, but also the award committee, so that we can regularly rotate people in and rotate people out, so more of us, more of the community members can participate in the process. So these is two things I added.
one more thing I'll mention that came up in the equity talks was how there was very little understanding of how the awards were decided. And so on what basis, how they're evaluated. We did introduce the submittable system for collecting nominations last year. So we did get all the nominations in a system that was not email. So that was good. But we didn't have any insight into why people were getting awards And so that's something we would like to be able to offer, even if it's sensitive information to give for particular candidates, but just to have an idea of what are the things that people are evaluating, because currently it's a little bit of an unknown quantity. And then there was one other thing that was about evaluations. Yeah, just making that more transparent. I think that's it. I think that covers all of the points that we have been discussing. So, yes, the final thing was just the reason. One other reason we have been rethinking this is because we tend to have awardees who are from certain regions year after year, and that's something that we want to be. And it's not escaped people's notice. It came up again in the equity talks multiple times. And so that's something that we want to be able to look into. We have minutes if we want to spend on talking about awards. Anybody? Helena and then Susanna.
Yeah, just really quick. I wrote Josh this morning because I like literally had one of those moments where I remembered that we wanted to change the nomination form because of what happened with the Turing Award and everything like that. And so I sent to them like everything with regards to our blog post and the commitments that we've made thus far. And he's going to go contact the ACM Awards folks as well to figure out, because they said a while ago that they were going to change their award process as well. And so we should find out what they're doing and maybe integrate that into how we do it. I apologize to him that I just completely forgot, but I'm glad it came back to me.
Thank you. There's actually, yes, I know that Geraldine Fitzpatrick is on the committee with the ACM. So there is some representation of our community there. I think they were going to do a webinar. Maybe they've already done it. I'm not sure, but that was for the ACM level awards. And yeah, that's also something that we should be thinking about in terms of having SIGCHI representation there. Susanna?
Yeah, and I think I would like, and I've made my comment already in the survey, but I think when it comes to the nomination, maybe it's also a step when a first filter has already kicked in. So who is actually not nominated and why? And I understand from my experience that there might be people who are writing a nomination who are maybe not native speakers and who are maybe not used to some let's say, expected quasi-standards that are there for such a nomination letter, who don't know what is the expectation phrase that you should use and stuff like that on. So I was falling into the same trap when I was a young European German PhD student. So that would be maybe also a good point in, if possible, retrospectively looking at those nominations who haven't even, let's say, passed a certain level, you know, if there was any of these more syntactic elements that made them kick out. And second, I would really encourage if we can do some kind of active recruitment worldwide and saying, okay, if there's best papers, you know, that would be maybe a candidate for that, or if a person has 2 best papers and so on. So to see, you know, what are the little indicators that show us that maybe the one or other supervisor could be getting a nudge that there's this awards and that there might be a nomination process. So I think that could help increase also the diversity of the final awardees.
Yeah, thank you. I'm making notes, and also there's a comment around, well, thank you, Stacey, for sharing the reference to the Turing Award statement. And so you can take a look at that just to see what Helena was talking about with regards to the ACM Turing Award from last year. And then with regards to example successful nominations, I think that is something that we could definitely try to put together. So it's great feedback. I have some insight into this just because I was running the submittable system last year. So I will say that it is very clear that some people really do know how to nominate others and are very skilled at doing it. And that's not everyone. So I think giving some guidelines would be great. Anything else? We have a couple more minutes to talk about this. But if you want, you can just put your feedback in the survey as well. Okay, so if there isn't anything else, then we can move on. I think next we have Stacey reporting back about the accessibility, so updates from the Accessibility Committee.
Yes, hi everybody, I'm Stacey Branham. I'm an assistant professor at the University of California, Irvine. And on the EC, I'm happy to be the adjunct chair for accessibility. So for folks who are new to the executive committee and all of our wonderful community members joining, just a little context. Back in June, July, we held a vote to ratify the members of our first ever accessibility committee. So we now have 14 fabulous volunteers who are helping to make our community more accessible. And since then, we've been holding monthly all hands meetings, and we also have divided into 3 working groups. One of them is focused on creating guidelines for accessibility, another on assessing the current status of accessibility, and another that I'm heading is about creating policies. And these groups are run by Michael Crabb from the University of Dundee and Emmeline Brule from the University of Sussex, who are just incredible volunteers. So a shout out to them. And I'm looking forward to sharing all the wonderful accomplishments that they have already begun embarking on later. But today I have a very singular focus, and that is to get our group on the up and up and have an official set of bylaws. So for the past couple of months, I've been working with the policy committee to craft a set of rules by which we're governed. And I believe the formal process is that the executive committee will vote on those bylaws to ultimately ratify them. So I just wanted to kind of give all of you an overview of what process we've been through, what the key features of the bylaws are. Don't worry if I sent an email last week with a draft of the bylaws for the executive committee to take a look at, but don't worry if you haven't read it yet. I know it's a very busy time. We are not planning to vote today, as far as I understand it. We're going to have some time for you to give us feedback and then do an online vote, I think. So let's see here. Let me share with you in the chat a link to our draft. it's a Google Doc. I apologize if this is not accessible to the broader community. Please let me know, and then I will make it in a format that you can view. And I'm also sharing with you the active rules and procedures from the CHI steering committee, because I think Regan Mandrake is primarily to praise for this, but they have a really beautiful model, I think, of what bylaws ought to be for committees. So we have followed them very closely. Our process was the working group for policies, which is myself, Zulema Morgado Ramirez, Anushka Zolomi, I'm sorry, I'm butchering names, Maya Naftali, and Desi Umpan. First, a couple of them drafted an outline. Then we collectively, over like a month and a half period, crafted the text. Then we took it to the entire 14-person committee and gave them a week of feedback and back and forth and editing. And then we voted to send it up to the EC. So this is kind of like accepted by the broad committee. Anyway, we've based our guidelines mostly on the SC rules and procedures. And if I can just briefly, I don't know if it'd be useful for me to share my screen and kind of show you where I'm skimming through it and show you the key parts, but I wanted to share with you the kind of similar features to the existing bylaws, and then pull out the things that are new so that you can draw your attention to them and give them extra scrutiny, perhaps. I'll try. It doesn't look like I can share my screen like I have permissions, but in the document, you'll notice that we start with a vision and a mission, which is exactly what the CHI steering committee does. We have a policy of voting and non-voting membership. Basically, everyone's a voting member unless they need to take a step back or they're not able to participate fully, but we follow that process.
Sorry to interrupt. You can share your screen now, I think.
Thank you. Here we go. Yeah. I hope this is useful. I'll make the text bigger because I know it's real hard to see. But here's our vision and mission, Article 1. And we have a description of voting and non-voting members. I'm going to skip down. We also have a policy that explains how you convert between voting and non-voting membership in Article 3. We list our various roles and responsibilities. We have a chair, a vice chair. We kept it pretty simple because we're smallish and newish, but we also have a community partnerships chair who will reach out to entities like SIG Access and Access SIGCHI, et cetera, to collaborate. We also have a web and communications chair. Okay. The places where we depart are largely that we have this notion, we have a timeline that kind of gives a recommended time at which we fill various seats. And something that's important to note is that we've had this notion of cohorts and that we stagger terms. So the executive committee term is 3 years, but we'd like to bring in half the committee every 18 months so we can have some continuity and we're not just like dropping 15 members and picking up 15 new members every 3 years. So that's one big departure. We also encode strategic planning as something that is like core to what we do, because we really want to have a tight set of goals that we're trying to achieve and ways to assess whether we're actually achieving them and then report that back to the community. So we talk about strategic planning as something we do here down in section 4. A couple more things, and then I'll open it up to questions and we can move on. We do not require in-person meetings, which I believe every other committee does. It's kind of like one of the fundamental things, maybe once or a few times a year, you all get together in order to have productive meeting sessions. But because we believe firmly that accessibility requires some flexibility around that, we've said that you can have in-person meetings, but I'm trying to find where I even mention, but we specify that you have to offer a virtual option if you're going to do in-person meetings. Here we go. No, I'll ultimately find it. Participation and transparency here. So I think we talk about it in section 2 of Article 5. And then finally, we outline communication and transparency practices as well as data practices. So we wanted to make sure that it was clear that our group needs to be in communication with the community about what we're doing and why we're doing it, and open ourselves to feedback. So we do specify what we have to make public, like meeting agendas, and allow others to attend our meetings, sort of like we're doing here today. And then the final thing about data, we just wanted to note like what things we have to document and for how long we document them digitally. So these are all very new sections, and we would be delighted to have feedback from the executive committee on how to make those robust and improve them. So that was a whirlwind tour. I don't know if Neha, you want to specify our like recommended timeline for doing a vote, but we were thinking maybe a week from today, we could put out a vote to the whole executive committee on an email, and maybe the intervening week, people have time to make comments and offer suggestions. Neha, do you have a recommendation?
I think that sounds great. I don't know if anyone has any objections to that. If you do, then you can let us know. If not now, then later as well would be fine. And yes, I want to just echo what Helena has said in the chat, that this is amazing. And we really have been saying, I think over and over again, that anyone thinking about a committee, look at the notes that Stacey and Soraya have from forming this committee. This is the model to aspire for. I don't think anyone, or I don't want to speak for anyone, but I really don't think I could have managed this when we were putting together the SIGCHI Development Fund Committee a couple of years ago. So I was just in awe. So thank you for that. And yes, we're running a little bit shorter in time. So I'm just going to quickly actually ask Nick if she's here now, because I know that she joined a little while ago, if she could introduce herself. And I like that we're talking about our sustainability goals. So this is our AC for sustainability, and this is something that we're committed to. Nick, are you here?
Yes, apologies for being late.
No worries. Would you like to quickly introduce yourself to everybody?
Yes, so I'm Nick Bidwell. I'm a sustainability chair. I hope to have a committee with me in the very short term future. And the train was cancelled, so I'd literally run in through the thing. Let me open up the goals. Okay, there's a number of goals which somewhat predictable, such as informing, helping conferences, sharing information to keep thinking about our sustainability impact, partnering with industry to think about our discipline in the whole, and generally cultivating a culture of sustainability across the whole of HCI. But I don't want to sort of flag up any of those in particular, because I'm very keen that we have a very diverse perspective on sustainability, because it affects people differently. And so I want to work very closely with equity, accessibility chairs, the conference chairs, and obviously the whole of the community, to make sure that when we make these decisions or put forward programs, that they sort of embrace those different perspectives on sustainability. So I don't want to over emphasize any particular goal, but I will, in the very short term future, hope that these will become a little bit more prioritized.
Thank you, Nick. And I'm going to jump ahead now to our miscellaneous updates. So I've added in the chat here a survey link that I just received from Cliff and Simona, so CHI General Chairs. They're wanting to do a survey for those who are thinking about attending or thinking about not attending CHI in the coming year. And so please, if you could fill that out. I'm sure it's not a very long survey. I think it has just 4 or 5 questions, but that will really help them to figure out how to take next steps with regards to CHI planning. There is likely also to be a conversation that they'd like to have with the community. We'll keep you posted on that as well as we get information from them. And that may be over the next couple of weeks. So just a session like this where we have people who'd like to just hear from them or share their thoughts on doing a hybrid and or virtual CHI. So that's the update about CHI 22 that I wanted to just mention. Let's see, don't think I have time for everything, but I'll quickly cover. So we are in the process of forming regional committees that some of which we have already started. So there was the Asian Development Committee. There is going to be the there is already the SIGCHI Latin America Committee, and we're also in the process of talking with SIGCHI members and HCI researchers in Southern Europe. So that's the Med-CHI region. If you are from there, if you're not part of these conversations yet, then let us know and we'll include you. It's basically a group of people just getting together to just chat about how we could build HCI capacity and build stronger ties in these regions. And this is in line with just in general developing stronger local and global ties across SIGCHI. And in relation to this goal, we're also going to be doing panels at CSEW and CHI Play. And you'll see, I think we've called them both SIGCHI Cross Borders, and we have representatives from the EC who are also part of these communities talking about how we can think about strengthening the local and the global within these conference communities. And then there's the open calls for volunteering that I'll share. So we don't have enough time to talk about it now, but it's just something to think about for those of you who are interested in volunteering. This is what our survey currently looks like, and it's going to be permanently open just for people to express an interest in participating. And then I think one other point was that we have the conference, the ACM Compass conference, that is 100% SIGCAS, that would like to be 50% SIGCHI and 50% SIGCAS. So that's something that I think we'll have to discuss, but we don't have enough time to do that discussion, but just an update that this is what is going on with the community. Questions in the next 2 minutes before we close out? Yes, I see a hand up. So Stephen. Your audio isn't coming through.
Is that any better?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
So I was the SIGCHI Bulletin Editor-in-Chief from 93 to 99, and then the Interactions Editor-in-Chief from 98 to 2004, and I was chair of CHI 97. One of the things that I'm worried about is that SIGCHI is losing its history. When I was editor, I used to make sure that that I kept all details about SIGCHI's history, and you should check out the January '96 issue of SIGCHI Bulletin, because it has a lot of history. But the things that I miss now, if I go to the website, is I can't find about the development of membership, about the accounts, about the conference chairs, about conference attendees that we used to have in the SIGCHI Bulletin. And I think that's a shame that that's being missed. And the other thing I wanted to raise is that next spring is the 40th anniversary of SIGCHI, and I wonder if we're doing anything for that.
Thank you. Thanks for those questions. So to your first question, this is something that we have been talking about. So Susanna has talked about possibly building an archive of conference materials. I actually just got an email from someone wanting to send me the programs for CHI from 91 to the early 2000s. So that's in the mail, and hopefully we'll digitize them and add them to the website. We do have some history related initiatives that have been ongoing. But thank you for bringing this up, because it's sort of been something that we've been wanting to follow up on, but we haven't actively done it. And maybe we'll get in touch with you also to see if you have any other feedback. But there's also a project that we had started over the last 3 years. Yeah, so I was going to mention the Catherine's project with that Wendy just in chat, and that's something that also is ongoing. But
well, there's also all the stuff that like Lauren was doing for the past 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah, with Ben and Jonathan Gruden. And yeah, so we're capturing those videos, and then we facilitated Catherine actually getting all of her videos into the ACM Digital Library, as well as the SIGCHI YouTube channel. And so yeah, this has definitely come up regularly, and we've been trying to capture it, but somewhere along the way we stopped capturing history, and we're trying to get back into it over the past 3 years. So it's probably something that needs to be continued, to have somebody focused on it.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, and thank you also for the note in the chat. Anything else that anyone would like to bring up? We're over time, but
well, yeah, I mean, are we doing anything for the 40th anniversary?
Oh, sorry, you had a second question. Yeah, Elena, are we doing something? Not that I know of, but we should. So I didn't realize that it was 40 years with SIGCHI next year, but we will. Yes is the answer. We have to have a cake, minimum. Yes. Okay, well, that's exciting. We get to plan something, and we'll keep you all posted, and the notes for this meeting will be up. And so thank you, Tammy, who's our VP for Membership and Communications, for doing this. And yes, we will see you next month. All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you for coming.